In a quiet African village, surrounded by golden fields and ancient hills, there lived a bright young girl named Zanira. She was known by everyone, not for making noise or causing trouble, but for the light she carried in her heart. Her smile could lift even the heaviest moods, and her kindness touched every corner of the village. Elders often said she had an old soul, wise beyond her years. Children followed her lead, and even animals seemed to trust her more than others. Zanira lived with her mother, Makena, a woman respected, not just in their village, but in nearby ones too. Makena was a healer, a midwife who knew every leaf, every root, and every remedy passed down through generations. But more than that, she was a mother full of warmth. Their home was small, but it overflowed with love, the sound of laughter, the smell of boiling herbs, and the peace of gentle evenings filled their days. Makena and Zanira shared everything, their stories, their songs, and their silences. Together, they were like two pieces of the same soul. The villagers often said that Makena's daughter had inherited more than her beauty. She had her strength, her heart, and maybe even her gift. No one could have guessed that such a peaceful life was about to be shaken, or that the bond between mother and daughter would soon be tested in the harshest way. It all changed one heavy monsoon season. The sky turned dark for days, and the rains didn't stop. What started as gentle showers soon became endless storms, and with them came sickness. Makena, strong and full of life, suddenly grew weak. At first, the villagers thought it was just exhaustion. Maybe she had worked too hard, helped too many. But her fever grew worse each day. Zanira sat by her side, holding her hand, whispering the songs they used to sing together. But no herb, no prayer, no healing touch could save Makena this time. One cold night, as the wind howled through the cracks in the walls, Makena took her last breath, leaving behind silence where her laughter used to live. The village mourned deeply. Makena had helped deliver many of their children. She had healed their wounds and comforted them in pain. Now she was gone, and the entire village felt the loss. But no one felt it more than Zanira and her father, Omondi. He didn't cry in front of others, but something inside him broke. He stopped speaking much, stopped meeting people's eyes. He barely looked at Zanira. The man who once danced with his wife under the moon now stared at the ground like he had nothing left. Days passed, then weeks. People said grief had swallowed him whole, and then, suddenly, everything shifted again. A stranger arrived from a distant town, a woman with smooth skin, bright clothes, and a soft voice. Her name was Naya. She carried herself with pride, and her beauty was the kind that made people look twice. No one knew much about her, but whispers spread quickly. Within a short time, Omondi announced he would marry her. The village was shocked. Some thought it was too soon. Others said maybe he just needed someone to help raise Zanira. Naya smiled at everyone, brought gifts to the neighbors, and told them she only wanted to build a family. People were hesitant, but they said nothing. After all, a grieving man choosing love again, wasn't that a good thing? Zanira watched quietly. She didn't understand how her mother could be gone one moment, and another woman could be walking through their home the next. Naya tried to talk sweetly to her, even brought her sweets once or twice, but it didn't feel right. Something about Naya's smile didn't reach her eyes. It felt cold, like a shadow hiding behind light. Still, the house changed quickly. Makena's things were packed away. Her herbs were tossed or replaced. The songs that once filled the rooms were gone. Now, the air felt different, tight, uncomfortable, unfamiliar. Nia took over everything, moving with quiet control. She acted gentle in front of others, but inside the house, her words grew sharper. She began telling Omondi that Zanira was too spoiled, too wild, too free. And Omondi, still lost in his own sorrow, didn't argue. He nodded. He agreed. He stayed quiet. Zanira felt alone, even with people around her. Her world had shifted in a way she couldn't stop. First, she lost her mother. Now she was losing her home. But the worst, she had no idea, was still to come. In the beginning, Nia acted like a dream come true. She wore bright clothes and always smiled. She called Zanira my little flower, and even braided her hair in the mornings while singing soft songs. She brought gifts from the town, shiny bangles, sweet candies, and coloured beads. and gave them to the neighbors' children. The villagers, who once doubted her sudden arrival, slowly began to accept her. They said Amondi had found a good woman, someone who could heal what had been broken. People nodded with approval when they saw Naya walking through the village with a basket of fruit or helping an old woman carry water. She was clever, always saying the right things, always showing the perfect smile. Zanira watched all of this quietly. On the outside, it looked like life was settling down, like things were returning to normal, but she could feel something wasn't right. Naya's eyes didn't carry warmth when she looked at her. They were cold, sharp, and calculating. Still, for a while, things stayed peaceful. Naya played her part well. Even when Amondi left to work in a neighboring region, a job that would keep him away for weeks at a time, she stayed soft and sweet, at least in front of others. But everything changed the moment Amondi was gone. The same hands that once braided Zanira's hair now pushed her aside. The sweet voice turned bitter. Nia no longer called her my little flower. Instead, she began calling her witch's child. At first, it was small things. A loud voice when the girl forgot to sweep the corner. A slap when she didn't serve food fast enough. But soon, the abuse became constant. Nia blamed Zanira for everything. A broken pot, a missing cloth, even a sudden change in the weather. She said it was Zanira's fault because she carried her mother's dark energy. She claimed that Makena had used strange herbs, whispered strange words at night, and now her daughter was cursed too. The villagers didn't see this side of Nia. To them, she was still the lovely, respectful woman who visited the sick and smiled at everyone. She continued her act, and no one suspected anything. Zanira, on the other hand, lived in silence. She stopped smiling. She moved carefully, trying not to upset Nia, but it didn't help. No matter what she did, it was never enough. Nia always found a reason to shout, to insult, to punish. Inside the house, Zanira became a servant. She was made to wake up before the sun, clean every corner, cook meals she never got to eat, and fetch water from the farthest well. Her hands became rough, her feet tired, but she said nothing, because when she tried to speak, Naya's words cut deeper than any whip. "Your mother was a witch," she would hiss, "and witches give birth to demons." Sometimes she would even laugh as she said it, as if it was a joke only she understood. Zanira often sat alone at night, staring at the place where her mother's herbs used to hang, now replaced by Nia's beads and mirrors. Her heart ached, but no one came to help. Her father, far away, never saw the bruises, never heard the cruel words. And even when he returned, Naya's mask was back on, sweet, soft, gentle. She'd tell him how well Zanira was doing, how she was finally learning to behave, and he believed every word. As the days passed, Zanira began to realize that the home she once knew was gone. Her mother's love had been replaced with Naya's cruelty, and though her voice was quiet, her spirit had not yet broken. But deep inside, something was changing. A small flame, growing stronger with each tear she refused to let fall. Life for Zanira slowly turned into something she could barely understand. The soft songs that once filled her home were replaced with Naya's sharp voice, barking orders. From morning to night, Zanira was worked like a servant. She was made to cook even when the pots were too heavy for her small arms. She had to scrub the floors until her knees ached and walk long distances to fetch water, sometimes more than once a day. Naya always found something wrong, a corner left dusty, water that wasn't cold enough, or food that didn't taste the way she wanted, and every small mistake meant punishment. When Zanira couldn't keep up, Naya would hit her. Sometimes it was a slap, sometimes she was pulled by her hair or shoved so hard that she fell. Her hands were often bruised, and her back carried marks that she hid from the world. Naya was careful though. She never let the villagers see her cruel side. In public, she was the perfect stepmother, smiling, helpful, polite. But inside that house, behind closed doors, she ruled with fear. Zanira's laughter disappeared. The light in her eyes dimmed. She no longer played with the other children. She walked slowly, with her head down, and spoke only when spoken to. The once joyful girl, who used to run through the fields, now moved like a shadow, silent and invisible. She missed her mother's touch, her warm words, her stories that made the stars feel close. Every night she cried softly into her blanket, afraid of being heard. One day, when her father returned from his work, Zanira thought maybe she could finally speak up. She waited until Naya was outside, then quietly told him, "She hurts me when you're gone." Her voice trembled as she spoke. She didn't tell him everything, just enough to hope he might notice. But when Naya returned and saw the look on Amondi's face, she knew something was wrong. Before Zanira could even say another word, Nia burst into fake tears. "She's lying," Nia said, holding her chest like she was in pain. "She's angry because I discipline her. She wants to run wild like before, but I'm only trying to make her better. She's not the same since McKenna passed. She needs strong hands to guide her." Her voice broke, as if she was heartbroken, and she even let a tear fall. Omondi looked between his daughter and his wife. He saw Zanira standing there quiet and still, and then he saw Naya crying, shaking, acting like she was the one being hurt. His heart, already confused by grief and guilt, made the wrong choice. He believed Naya. He told Zanira to behave. He told her not to lie. And just like that, the little hope she had shattered. After that day, things got worse. Naya was more cruel, more careful. She reminded Zanira often, "Your own father doesn't believe you." The villagers began to notice the bruises on her arms and the sadness in her eyes. But Naya's sweet words and perfect behavior in public kept them quiet. No one dared to speak against her. Some whispered among themselves, wondering if something was wrong, but they all stayed silent. No one wanted to be the first to accuse the woman who seemed so perfect. Zanira learned to hide her pain. She wiped her tears before stepping outside. She smiled when someone looked her way, just to avoid questions. But inside, she was breaking. She had no one left to run to, no one to trust. And yet, even in that silence, deep in her heart, something still refused to give up. Something small but powerful waited, quietly watching, quietly growing. One rainy afternoon, everything went too far. Zanira, tired from hours of chores, accidentally spilled a cup of hot tea. It splashed on Naya's clothes and floor, and for a moment there was silence. A silence so sharp it felt like the world had stopped. Naya's eyes filled with rage, her lips curled into a sneer, and she didn't shout this time. Instead, she pointed at Zanira and said, "You're not just disobedient, you're possessed." Those words changed everything. Naya dragged the trembling girl into the backyard, a patch of hard dirt surrounded by a crumbling fence and thorny weeds. Without hesitation, she brought out an old iron chain and locked it around Zanira's ankle, fastening the other end to a post. The cold metal cut into her skin. Her tiny body shook with fear and cold, but Naya didn't care. She left her there, exposed to the sun during the day and the freezing wind at night. No blanket, no food, unless Naya felt like it. She became a prisoner in her own home, treated worse than any animal. But Naya didn't stop there. She needed to make sure no one came looking for Zanira, so she started whispering to neighbors. She told them that Zanira had been cursed, that her mother had passed down dangerous magic, and now it was waking up. She said the child spoke to shadows, screamed in the night, and brought bad luck to the house. "We're doing a ritual," she'd say, with a sad face. "A resting ritual, to calm her spirit, to protect us all." Her lies spread like wildfire, and the villagers, already superstitious, believed her. No one came to visit. No one asked questions. Children who once played with Zanira were now warned to stay away. Elders crossed themselves when they passed the house. And if they heard cries or saw movement in the backyard, they looked away. Fear and gossip had blinded them. Zanira's father, still away for work, heard only what Nia told him. She wrote him letters, full of concern and sadness. She said Zanira was sick, her soul unwell, and she needed to be kept in isolation, as the elders had once done with troubled children. She told him the girl was being watched over with care, that everything was under control. Confused and distant, Omondi didn't ask more, and so the days passed. Zanira remained in chains, cold, dirty, and alone. Rain soaked her clothes. The sun burned her skin. Her stomach often ached with hunger, and the nights were filled with terrifying sounds, howling winds, rustling creatures, and the echo of her own sobs. Yet no one came, no one checked, no one questioned. But even as her body weakened, something inside her stayed strong. A quiet voice in her heart, like her mother's, reminded her she was not what they called her. She was not cursed. She was not dangerous. She was Zanira, the girl with a kind heart and a bright soul. And though she was chained like a prisoner, she began to dream of freedom, of escape. of a day when the truth would be seen. Naya thought she had broken her, but she was wrong. The fire inside Zanira was still burning, slowly, silently, waiting. Days became weeks, and still Zanira remained in chains. Her world shrank to the small corner of the backyard, where the hard ground became her bed and the sky her only roof. She was fed only once a day, usually leftover scraps tossed carelessly into a bowl like she was some wild creature. Her only source of water was what fell from the sky, rain collected in small puddles or caught with her hands. Her body grew weaker, her arms thinner, her skin darkened under the burning sun, and the cold night winds left her shivering, wrapped in nothing but her thin, torn clothes. The metal chain around her ankle was the worst. It was heavy, cold, and unkind. Each time she moved too fast or too far, it would yank her back, scraping her skin. The spot where it touched her ankle began to bleed, then scab, then bleed again. The pain was constant, but Zanira said nothing. She had learned that screaming didn't help. No one would come. No one would listen. At first, her heart had broken. She cried for her mother. She cried for her father. She cried for anyone to just see her. But after days and nights of silence, her tears dried. In their place came something else, a quiet strength. Her mother had always told her that strength didn't come from muscles, it came from spirit. And now, even though her body was weak, her spirit refused to die. So, Zanira began to watch. She watched everything, how Naya moved, when she came outside, when she slept, and when she left the house. She noticed that Naya always locked the chain in the same way, and always checked it once in the morning and once at night. But Zanira also noticed something more important. The post that held the chain had a crack near the bottom, a small weakness where the chain was nailed in, and she remembered something else, a sharp-edged stone she had found and hidden under her old mat the day before Naya had chained her. Each night, when the world was quiet and the stars blinked above her, Zanira would reach under the mat and take out the stone. Slowly, quietly, she began grinding it against the chain near the weak spot. It made almost no sound, just a faint scratch. She was careful not to be seen. She'd work for just a few minutes, then hide the stone and lie down as if she was sleeping. Her hands ached, her fingers bruised. Sometimes she cut herself with the sharp edge, but she didn't stop. She remembered her mother's voice, soft and steady, telling her, "If you stay still, the world will pass you by. But if you move, even in chains, you can change your world." So she moved, not loudly, not with screams, but with determination. Each night, she worked. Each night, the chain became a little weaker. No one knew what she was doing. Naya thought the silence meant she had given up. But inside, Zanira's mind was awake and alive, counting the days, studying the lock, remembering every pattern, every movement. She had learned how to survive in chains. Now, she was learning how to escape them. Her spirit, once bent under cruelty, was now focused, like a blade being sharpened in the dark. She was not waiting to be rescued. She was building her own freedom, one scratch at a time. Zanira waited. She watched. She listened. Her eyes followed every move Naya made, every habit she repeated. In silence, she became a student of her stepmother's life. She knew exactly when Naya stepped outside to sweep the front yard, how long she stayed at the market to gossip, and even which days she visited the elder woman across the field to share stories. But most important of all, Zanira discovered a secret. Every 3 nights, Nia would sit under the moon with a jug of palm wine. She would drink slowly at first, then faster until her words slurred and her steps wobbled. On those nights, her cruelty faded, replaced by a drunken silence as she collapsed on her mat, fast asleep and unaware of the world around her. That's when Zanira worked the hardest. As soon as the house grew quiet, Zanira reached under her mat, pulled out the sharp-edged stone she had hidden, and worked twice as long on the weak point of the chain. The grinding was slow, careful. She didn't want to make a sound, didn't want to draw attention. Her fingers bled, her wrist ached, but she did not stop. Every stroke brought her closer to freedom, and every time the sky began to lighten, she would quickly hide the stone, cover the marks on the chain with dirt, and lie still. But freedom would take more than strength. It would need a plan, a real plan, so she built one in her mind piece by piece. She knew the chain was almost weak enough, but if it snapped, Naya would hear. If she escaped, someone might see her. So Zanira thought of a way to create noise far from where she would be. She remembered that the neighbor kept 3 loud dogs, and they barked at the slightest sound. All she needed was something to trigger them, something loud enough to stir the night without pointing towards her. She waited for the right day. It had to be a wine night, when Nia would be too drunk to notice anything. That morning, while pretending to sweep the small area she was allowed, Zanira carefully placed a clay pot near the backyard gate, half hidden behind a bush. She positioned it so it could fall with just a small push. She practiced it in her mind again and again. Chain first, then pot, then run. Her heart beat faster each day. The plan grew stronger. She could feel the difference in the chain. She could see the pot waiting like a silent ally. And most of all, she could feel herself changing. No longer just a girl in chains. She was now a girl with a plan, with fire in her soul, and a dream in her heart. The village still believed she was cursed. Her father still believed she was resting, but Zanira didn't need their belief. She needed her moment. One moment when the stars aligned, the wine flowed, and the chain finally gave way. She would wait for it, not with anger, but with patience, not with tears, but with intelligence. Every breath she took, every sound she memorized, every second she counted brought her closer, and soon, very soon, she would be ready. The night was silent, wrapped in the soft glow of a full moon. Everything in the village seemed calm, but inside Zanira's heart, a storm was building. She had waited for this moment, planned every move in her mind, and now it was finally here. Nia had drunk more palm wine than usual and was already snoring loudly on her mat. The stars blinked above, like witnesses to what was about to unfold. Zanira waited a few extra minutes to be sure. Then, with trembling hands, she pulled out the sharp-edged stone for the last time. She crouched low and began sawing at the last sliver of metal holding the chain. Her breaths were shallow, her heart beat loud in her ears. Then snap, a soft clink, and the chain gave way. It was done. The chain that had held her for so many days and nights was finally broken. Her heart raced as she stood up. For the first time in weeks, her ankle was free. No cold iron biting into her skin. No barrier between her and the world. She moved slowly at first, careful not to make a sound. Her bare feet touched the cool earth, and she crept across the compound like a shadow. She reached the gate and gently tapped the clay pot she had placed days earlier. It tipped and shattered near the goat pen. The loud crash echoed in the quiet night. Within seconds, the neighbors' dogs began barking wildly, their sharp howls cutting through the silence. Lights flicked on in nearby huts. Doors creaked open. Curious voices whispered. Using the confusion, Zanira slipped into the maize fields, crouching low and moving fast between the tall stalks. Her breath caught in her throat each time she heard a voice or a dog bark, but she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. Her feet were scratched, her legs sore, but her spirit pushed her forward. She ran past the fields, past the drying huts, past the well she once fetched water from, and finally, she reached the edge of the village where Elder Mosey lived. His hut was lit by a small oil lamp, still burning through the night. He was the only elder who had ever looked at her with kind eyes, the only one who hadn't been fully convinced by Naya's lies. She knocked, not too loud, not too soft, just enough. The old man opened the door, his eyes widening in shock as he saw the dirt-covered, trembling girl standing before him, her ankle bruised and bleeding, her face tired but full of silent strength. Without a word, he pulled her inside, wrapped her in a cloth, and sat her down. He knew, deep down, he had always known something wasn't right, and now the truth stood right in front of him, not with screams or accusations, but with broken chain and a girl's quiet courage. Elder Mosey didn't wait. As the first light of dawn touched the sky, he sent word across the village for an emergency gathering. Curious murmurs spread like fire. Something had happened. By the time the sun fully rose, the village square was filled with people, their eyes wide with question. And then they saw her. Zanira stepped forward from behind Elder Mosey, wrapped in a faded cloth, barefoot and thin. But her posture was straight, her chin slightly raised. She looked nothing like the possessed child Naya had described. Her silence carried power, and her bruises spoke truths no one could deny. Mosey raised his hand and invited her to speak. In a soft but steady voice, Zanira told them everything. The night her mother died, how Naya came with sweet words and fake smiles, how her father left, and then how the pain began. Her voice trembled at times, but she didn't stop, and when her words faded, she quietly lifted her ankle to show the raw, red wound where the chain had lived. Gasps spread through the crowd. Then, from the back, a woman stepped forward. It was Achieng, one of the older women who often helped deliver babies. Her voice shook, but she spoke with strength. She admitted she had noticed the bruises on Zanira's arms, the sadness in her eyes, but fear had kept her silent. Now she couldn't keep quiet anymore. The murmurs grew louder, whispers turned to questions, and then Naya arrived. She walked into the square with the same proud sway, still smelling of wine. Her eyes scanned the crowd, then landed on Zanira. She laughed loudly and tried to twist the truth again, saying the girl had been sick, that she had tried to harm herself, that chaining her was for her own safety. But this time, no one believed her. Elder Mosi held up the chain. "This," he said firmly, "is not healing. This is cruelty." More villagers began remembering Makina, Zanira's mother, the gentle healer who had once saved their children, their elders. How could her daughter be cursed? Slowly, the lies that had once poisoned their minds began to vanish. The crowd shifted, faces turned cold, words turned sharp, and for the first time, Nia saw fear in their eyes, not for Zanira, but for her. Elder Mosi didn't wait. As the first light of dawn touched the sky, he sent word across the village for an emergency gathering. Curious murmurs spread like fire. Something had happened. By the time the sun fully rose, the village square was filled with people, their eyes wide with question. And then they saw her. Zanira stepped forward from behind Elder Mosi, wrapped in a faded cloth, barefoot and thin. But her posture was straight, her chin slightly raised. She looked nothing like the possessed child Naya had described. Her silence carried power, and her bruises spoke truths no one could deny. Mosi raised his hand and invited her to speak. In a soft but steady voice, Zanira told them everything. The night her mother died, how Naya came with sweet words and fake smiles, how her father left, and then how the pain began. Her voice trembled at times, but she didn't stop, and when her words faded, she quietly lifted her ankle to show the raw, red wound where the chain had lived. Gasps spread through the crowd. Then, from the back, a woman stepped forward. It was Achieng, one of the older women who often helped deliver babies. Her voice shook, but she spoke with strength. She admitted she had noticed the bruises on Zanira's arms, the sadness in her eyes, but fear had kept her silent. Now she couldn't keep quiet anymore. The murmurs grew louder, whispers turned to questions, and then Naya arrived. She walked into the square with the same proud sway, still smelling of wine. Her eyes scanned the crowd, then landed on Zanira. She laughed loudly and tried to twist the truth again, saying the girl had been sick, that she had tried to harm herself, that chaining her was for her own safety. But this time, no one believed her. Elder Mosi held up the chain. "This," he said firmly, "is not healing. This is cruelty." More villagers began remembering Makina, Zanira's mother, the gentle healer who had once saved their children, their elders. How could her daughter be cursed? Slowly, the lies that had once poisoned their minds began to vanish. The crowd shifted, faces turned cold, words turned sharp, and for the first time, Nia saw fear in their eyes, not for Zanira, but for her.